The Senior Bowl has skyrocketed the draft stock of many fantasy football relevant players here. We're talking guys like Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, last year, Christian Watson, Damian Pierce. Go back a couple years, you get guys like Russell Wilson and many, many more. Here are the 5 prospects that I am watching to see a major increase in their NFL draft and fantasy football value at the 2023 Senior Bowl. Let's start with Dontayvion Wicks, the wide receiver out of the University of Virginia, coming in at 6'1", 200, 3-star prospect here for the Cavaliers. He had a monster 2021 season, 57 receptions for 1,203 yards and 9 touchdowns. He led the Cavaliers in all 3 categories. Virginia has an offensive coordinator change from 2021 to 2022, and Dontayvion Wicks ends up with 30 receptions for 430 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2022. Dontayvion Wicks' film shows a fluid wideout that moves really well for his frame. He shows the ability to make highlight catches, stretches out to haul in balls thrown over his head, or that lead him well downfield. One of the most exciting parts of his 2021 film is when his quarterback, Brendan Armstrong, was able to anticipate where he was going to be well, and you could see Wicks catch a 30-yard pass downfield in stride and keep moving here. He can beat that defensive back with the first step, and he has enough speed after that first step to maintain that separation into the deep third of the field. That's something we love to see from a boundary prospect. Wicks is somebody who will best profile here as lining up on the outside for an NFL team. In terms of throwing the ball here in his direction, you just got to get it close because Dontayvion Wicks is going to go up and get it. He's able to work off target. He's able to extend his frame and make himself bigger than he even seems on paper. The key difference between 2021 film and 2022 film was drops. Wicks' handwork looked a lot more suspicious in 2022. We saw more drops. So we're going to see where that mentality is and how consistent his handwork can be in drills throughout practice during the week. And it'll be nice to see him in one-on-one isolation drills. The wide receiver position, probably more than any other position, has the ability to really stand out because there's a lot of isolation drills where the wide receivers will line up one-on-one against defensive backs. So just tying back to that idea of being able to pull Wicks out of his scheme in college and really see him as an individual prospect. He's definitely somebody I'm excited about and somebody who could work his way into a solid rookie draft ADP. Next up is Derius Davis, the wide receiver out of TCU. Derius Davis coming in at 5'10", 175. Now, Davis was a 3-star recruit, but he actually was recruited as a defensive back to TCU. He makes the switch to wide receiver, and he really was able to stand out without a high level of production the last couple of years. Derius Davis will be the fastest player, at least on the offensive side of the ball, but likely the fastest player overall at the Senior Bowl. And we know that speed sells in the NFL. So he's going to have a huge opportunity relative to the other guys on the field to really stand out. I know things didn't go well for TCU in the national championship, but when Max Duggan needed him, he went to Derius Davis. Davis was 5 for 101 in the national championship game. Overall this season, 42 receptions for 531 yards and 5 touchdowns. He works really well along the boundary, and it might not matter for fantasy football purposes, but Derius Davis will return kicks and punts in the NFL. That's going to boost up his NFL draft projection, which can boost up his draft capital, which we know is important for fantasy football value. When you look at Derius Davis's tape here, you're going to see somebody whose speed jumps out right off the bat here. He gets off the line of scrimmage quickly and accelerates very well in a straight line. But he also moves well laterally. We love when that player can move down the field horizontally and vertically here. So he closes space quickly at all 3 levels of the field, and he has consistent hands. He actually holds on well through contact pretty well for a guy coming in at a $175. Now, a few years ago, that 175 number may have scared folks off, but when I watch his tape, when I watch his hands and his ability to work in traffic, that size, especially with recent trends in the NFL draft, don't scare me at all. I love the way that he's able to be a threat after the catch as well. He displays good body control and surprising contact balance, again, relative to his size. He is going to be somebody that I am going to be watching closely. I can't wait to see how his value increases over a week of practice and the Senior Bowl game itself. We're going to stick with TCU here and talk about quarterback Max Duggan. Max Duggan coming in at 6'2", 201. He has the ability for me far and away to come out the best quarterback here at the Senior Bowl. Now, it's important to recognize here that the top of this quarterback draft class isn't necessarily senior heavy. There were two players who were eligible for the Senior Bowl who have both declined invitations. The first one is Bryce Young, who, although he didn't classify as a senior, did finish his undergraduate degree. So he was eligible to be at the Senior Bowl. And the other more popular name relative to the opportunity to come to the Senior Bowl was Will Levis. We know Will Levis was extended an invitation to the Senior Bowl, and we know Will Levis has since declined that invitation. So that leaves a lot of opportunity here for Max Duggan to stand out. When I look at Duggan here, I'm seeing an accurate passer. He's able to fit the ball into tight windows throughout the short and midfield. That pairs up well with the types of drills he'll be asked to do. He's comfortable working within the pocket and has a solid mechanical foundation. Again, that's going to fit well with the drills he's going to be asked to do as a quarterback. He's an effective runner on tape, and he's able to display the ability to beat linebackers to the edge and be physical in short space and in the red zone. I don't think he'll necessarily be able to display that at the Senior Bowl, but I wanted to add that in case you weren't too familiar with Max Duggan's game. He displays arm strength, accuracy, and mobility. The reason that he's not being hyped up at the top of this draft class is because he doesn't display any of those things as good as any of the top prospects. But when you come with a high floor and a well-rounded skill set, that's the type of pairing here that when you pair that up with the off-the-field intangibles like I was mentioning, gives you an opportunity to be valued as a second or third round quarterback selection here and eventually find your way into a starting opportunity in the NFL. For me, Max Duggan's fantasy football value rise starts in Mobile, but it won't stop here for a while. This is one of the best tight end classes in terms of fantasy football value in recent memory. And there's going to be two tight ends who are going to be considered tier 1 or tier 2 fantasy football options that will be at the Senior Bowl. Luke Musgraves out of Oregon State, but I want to hone in on Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah. Dalton Kincaid is 6'4", 242. In just 25 games, he has been the Utah offense. 106 receptions, 1,400 receiving yards, and 16 touchdowns. Kincaid led Utah in receptions and receiving yards in 2022. He led them in receiving touchdowns in 2021 and 2022. As a reminder, folks, this is the tight end, all right? But he's exactly the type of tight end that we want to hone in on for potential fantasy football value. He's a wide tight end, right? Which means he's really there to go out and catch the ball. Utah is going to line him up here out wide. They lined him up split in. They put him in an H-back position, really utilized him around the field. And I think the Senior Bowl coaching staff is going to have fun with him as well. Why I love Dalton Kincaid specifically is it can be a little bit difficult for a tight end to stand out at the Senior Bowl, right? We're not going to get too excited about the blocking drills, but they do give the ability for them to have receiving drills as well. And I think Dalton Kincaid, relative to the other tight ends that are there, is really going to stand out as a receiver. Dalton Kincaid at this point in time is already getting top 50, even in some cases, first round NFL draft type. I'm a little bit more in the ballpark here of he'll be in that top 50 range, but nonetheless, he should stand out relative to the other tight end competition at the Senior Bowl here. He's athletic, he has good hands, and Meyer and Darnell Washington, the two tight ends I currently have ranked higher, will not be at the Senior Bowl, so he really should stand out. I'm a fan of Dalton Kincaid. I think I'm going to like him even more after Mobile. Let's finish up here with a running back so we make sure we hit every position. Chase Brown out of Illinois is an underrated prospect for now. Brown's coming in at 5'9", 207. He was a 3-star. He played one season at Western Michigan before transferring to the Fighting Illini. Chase Brown played in 12 games in 2022. He ran the ball 328 times for 1,643 yards and 10 touchdowns. And he led the Fighting Illini to a better than expected season. At one point, they were competing for that Big Ten West berth. They didn't end up getting it, but they were in it strictly because of Chase Brown. Running backs in general can struggle to stand out at the Senior Bowl because during the drills and quite frankly, even during the game, they try to shy away from the physicality, right? Because they don't want anybody to get injured. So it can be a little bit difficult for a guy like Chase Brown who smashes in between the tackles to really stand out. Why I like Chase Brown specifically as the running back who could stand out relative to his peers is because he's going to have the opportunity to display two traits that are valued by the NFL, but I don't think most folks generally consider him great at. And that's pass catching and pass blocking. There will be plenty of drills that allow the running back to show off both pass catching and pass blocking ability. And for me, Chase Brown has soft hands. He was utilized well when targeted in the Fighting Illini offense. He doesn't have a ton of receptions because I just mentioned it. He ran the ball 328 times. It ties into a little bit of the Kenneth Walker discussion we had last year, right? A lot of folks were knocking Kenneth Walker. Why didn't he catch the ball? Why didn't they throw him the ball? It's because they were running the ball with him nearly every play. Why would you waste touches with Chase Brown through the air if you know he's going to rack up 6 yards per carry on the ground, right? But at the Senior Bowl, you're not worried about winning. You're worried about showing off that player's skill set. And so I think Chase Brown is going to have the opportunity to show off that pass catching skill set. There's also plenty of pass blocking drills, and I think Chase Brown plays with a solid anchor, nice range. He's light on his feet, but he holds his ground with good lower body strength as a pass blocker. So when I say pass catching and pass blocking, what does that translate to? A potential 3-down back in the NFL. It's rare to have a prospect you could feel confident about as a 3-down back, but Chase Brown could leave Mobile labeled and considered as that. If he does, it's going to be a day 2 lock for him. He's going to get that coveted draft capital we're looking for, and he's going to shoot up in fantasy football rookie ADP. Chase Brown is already somebody who I'm targeting in my rookie drafts, but I'm thinking a lot more people are going to be targeting him after the Senior Bowl.